Hello everyone, and welcome as always to another tutorial video. This one's going to be a pretty short one. So I recently added this FX POM to the branch of Rero I've been using for Warframe stuff. And just a quick note, even though I made this branch for working with Warframe stuff, you can use it with Halo stuff, you can use it with your own stuff. The shader itself, it's not specific to Warframe. Like all this stuff I've used with Halo stuff, I've used with my own personal original projects. So don't just get locked into, oh, this is a Warframe shader. It's not, it's an all-purpose shader. It just has really good compatibility for Warframe because those are type of avatars I do a lot. But basically, I was going to show you guys how to use the FX POM because it has a lot of technical settings compared to the rest of the shader. So we're just going to add some heirloom effect to Varuna Prime here so you can see the process and I can explain all the settings. So first of all, you got to obviously enable the FX POM. The shader will kind of recalculate there, and I'm realizing I forgot the way she works. She has... So I'm going to add it to both her body and her extra parts. There we go. So once we turn it on, you can see already we're seeing a slight bit of the effect. To properly get the effect, we're obviously going to need a texture. So I'm just going to pop in the mag heirloom. So now we have the mag heirloom enabled. And now what this next setting is POM FX channel. POM FX channel uses the Tint map you have up here, and that selects which channel of the Tint map it's using. So we can say where we want to actually apply the effect. And then what null does is null is anywhere that RGB and A don't exist. So it's the inverse. I don't think Varuna Prime has any spots that, oh, she has a little bit of a spot that isn't covered. That one's really helpful for ones like Valkyr Heirloom. She uses that. So let's just real quick find a section that looks nice. Yeah, I think we'll put it on her. Actually, can we put it on? If you're doing an heirloom, you'll already have which channel you need. We'll put it there. So the next thing we have is FX uses matte mask. So if you have a material mask, what this switch will do is say, hey, instead of using the tint mask, use the material mask. Varuna Prime doesn't have one, so it just goes blank. For Warframes like Ember Heirloom, she does use a material mask for her heirloom effect rather than the tint mask. The next things we have are the high-low color settings. So what this does is basically the high layer, it's the red that you have in your FX map. And the important thing to note, I made this bottom out at 0.5 or 0.25. So you won't get, if your texture has like a black in it, like you see right there, that has some black, you won't see it on the emissives. That's mainly because that black is more for the height data. You really kind of want the effect to be fully visible in all areas just to kind of make it show up better. Then you have the low layer, which is the green channel of your FX map. So we're going to go ahead and find some colors for this. I think I'll do a purple. I like some purple. That's more of a pink. There we go. That's a nice purple. And then you know what? She has some blue, so we'll try and get that, make it a little brighter. Try and get some of that cyan-ish blue. There we go. I think that'll look nice when we're done with it. So the next thing we have is the high-level speed and scale. So this controls the speed at which it tiles and the scale the texture is at. So I prefer to do something like 5 so that you get it repeating a lot. As you can see right now by default, this is a little hard to see what's going on. I made the defaults a little crummy, I'm going to be honest with that. So we're going to quickly skip down to FX depth and ref. So we're just going to set all this to 0 for now. So that way we can see what the texture is doing. So now there's no depth. It's just on top. And you can use it that way too, just for a nice kind of Fresnel effect. But if you do set all these to 0 to get that effect, make sure you set the samples for all of this to 0, because otherwise you're going to be doing some quite expensive math that you are not using currently. And so what we're going to do now is customize the speed. I'm going to set the speed to 0 so we can see what's happening. So for nail power, controls how much it disappears to the edge of the surface. So you can see you can make some like glitter effects with this, which are pretty cool. But once again, if you're not using the depth, make sure to set the samples to 0 for all of these, the steps and the samples, just for processing. I really like the effect you can make with this. It looks pretty cool. But we're going to make it a little bit wider for this. Probably I like to do like 0.15 to 0.2. Yeah, we'll put it there. That's nice. So now let's get our scrolling settings. I think I'll have this one go downwards. So you can see now we have a bit of a scroll. We'll do like 2. No, 1.5. That looks nice. And as again, these control the tiling. So that's how much the texture is repeating. And I like to have it pretty high on the heirloom effects. Now let's do the other one. Yeah, I like to have it very high for the low color because it's usually like a glitter. And then I always like to have it scroll the opposite direction of my other texture and a little bit slower. So we get that cool energy effect. Now we'll actually make that a little bit like 0.25. There we go. So now our effect's starting to come together on a flat surface. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set our samples to something like 16 and 8. And now what we can start doing is the depth and ref settings. So this is depth and reference depth. And it works XY is for the high, ZW is for the low. So we'll start with the reference at about 0.5. That's a good metric to start with. And then we can start increasing our depth very slowly. And that starts to give us the parallax effect. So a quick note, these steps are quite expensive. I have it where it can go up to 120. Even I will never use that. I only have it go up to 120 for reference when I'm trying to debug. You never want to go above even like 20 probably. I would say go at most 220, but I would try and stay around 16 or even 10 would be good because this is quite expensive math. And I always set my minimum samples to half what my max samples are. I'm not going to go over the technical analysis of what all that is doing. It's quite complicated if you don't know shaders. But what these sidewall steps are, usually keeping that at 5 is a safe bet. These are essentially refinement. So you can go as high as 8 with these. They're not nearly as expensive as the others. And you never really need to go above 5, honestly. So let's now focus on our high texture. Let's move that in. Usually you have to kind of just mess with these till you get something you want. I always just eyeball it. I never really use in-game settings or anything. The way I did it in Unity is quite different from how they do it in Warframe, I'm pretty sure, but Unity is very fundamentally different. Okay. Now you can see what I'm talking about. So if you look into, you can see we're getting like this almost like stepping effect. So if we set these sidewall steps to like 5, you can see that completely disappeared. So once again, that's just kind of refinement. And now we have a pretty cool effect going, and we can mess with the reference to make it kind of pop inwards or outwards more. I'm happy with it right there. That's doing its job well. Maybe we'll make a little bit more depth. You do need to be careful with high depth and high reference for a few different reasons. One of the main ones is eventually your UV maps at the edges will start stretching. You can see we're getting a little bit of it already, but that isn't very much. But if I sit like the depth really high, you can see the warping becomes really obvious. Oh yeah, when I move, you can see just everything warps. But now when I have it to this thing, it's not as bad. I think that's pretty much it. So you can see, oh yeah, there's what I was talking about with the warping. Yeah, that is a lot of warping. You can't necessarily fix it completely because of the way the parallax effect functions, but you can refine it to look better. The other thing is if you push the parallax effect too much, you'll start to see, yeah, that stepping. Most of you are going to be tempted just to turn the samples up, but keep in mind, this is extremely performance heavy. So do not turn the samples above like 16, and there's no reason you're going to need more than 16. And if you feel like you do need more, too bad. This is how we stay optimized. So I'm gonna turn that down a bit more. So yeah, you can add this to like any Warframe. It doesn't have to be an heirloom. You can even make your own textures for this. It's quite versatile. And just once again, here's what it looks like using different channels. Ooh, that actually mixes really well with that red. It's quite nice. I like just seeing the different channels you can put it on, seeing how it works, and you can make there's the channel I was originally going to do. Yeah, I'm glad I went for doing it on the blackish segments. I think it came out better there. And then the alpha on the gold. You can do some cool stuff mixing this with metallics. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with this effect. So yeah, that's the FX POM. And if you don't know what the POM stands for, that's parallax occlusion mapping. So hopefully that helps you. Have a nice day.